G'day everyone. Have you ever wondered how the air conditioning system in your car works? Well, today we're going to have a look at what the air conditioning system does, how it operates, what makes up an air conditioning system, and what can go wrong. A vehicle's air conditioning system provides cool and dry air for the cabin. Unlike the air conditioning system of a house, it doesn't have a reverse cycle feature. A conventional air conditioning system on a car will only operate in one direction, providing cooling for the cabin. The heating is done through the heater core, which has coolant from the engine flowing through it, and we blow air over the heater core in order to warm the cabin. Now, this isn't to say that the air conditioning system doesn't play a part in heating the vehicle. If we have the heater on and the air conditioning at the same time, we can use it to demist the windows. It does this by removing moisture from the air via the evaporator. If we cool the air first before heating it up, we can draw all of that moisture onto the evaporator and let it drip out the drain tube underneath the vehicle. So if you ever see drips coming out of your vehicle when you've had the air conditioner switched on, whether it's a hot or a cold day, that is perfectly normal. It is just moisture being drawn out of the air into the evaporator and drained out underneath the vehicle. So what makes up the system? Well, of course, we have the compressor, we have a condenser, we have a receiver dryer, we have a metering valve, whether it's a thermal expansion valve or an orifice tube, and we have an evaporator. So how does it all work? Well, it works under the principle that if we apply pressure to something, maybe we fill up a pressurized vessel and compress gas or liquid into it, it will heat up. You apply pressure, it gets hotter. And if we allow it to expand or we release it from that vessel, it will get colder. Much the same as if you have an LPG bottle and we release it to atmosphere, the gas coming out is very, very cold and it may in fact freeze up. It's the same with this deodorant can here, and I shall demonstrate. So here we have our deodorant can. It is filled with a liquid, and it is a liquid because it is under pressure. When we spray it, it will come out as a mist or a vapor, and that will be quite cool to the touch because it is expanding. It is currently at 20 degrees. The can itself is pretty much room temperature. As we spray it, the can should cool down because we're releasing the pressure inside it. So let's give it a go. That is quite cold what's coming out, and it smells quite nice. And as we continue to spray it, the can is getting colder and colder. Even just in that time there, we are down into the 19 degrees. We've lost 1 degree of temperature just by releasing a little bit of pressure out of the can. It's no longer a liquid, it's more of a gas, and the can is slowly emptying and getting colder the longer we spray it. And the same principle applies to the air conditioning system. We have a refrigerant, and if we apply different pressures to it, it will heat up or cool down. The refrigerant we use is perfect for the job because it also will act as a liquid under pressure and a gas when we release that pressure, making it a very good heat exchanging medium for an air conditioning system. And it all starts here at the compressor. The compressor will suck refrigerant from the low pressure side and compress it into the high pressure side. And it's controlled from the cabin with the push of a button. The compressor is attached to the engine and it is turning with the engine until you demand it is switched on or off. So we have an idler. This pulley will idle and it will do nothing at all. The compressor is not turning until you switch it on. There is a magnet in the back and a clutch here. And when we activate the clutch, we can do it here, it will become active. So it will be idling now. We activate the clutch and it is active. We now have a compressor that is demanding drive from the engine. That will cut in and out as the temperature varies inside the cabin. So once it gets to, say, 8 degrees at the evaporator, the signal will be sent by the ECM to switch the air conditioner off, and it will cycle in and out as required on most vehicles. Some vehicles this will be on all the time depending on how the refrigerant is metered, but for most vehicles this will cycle in and out as the temperature of the evaporator reaches the minimum required spec. So with the back off the compressor here, we can see we have multiple pistons that will suck refrigerant from one side and they will deliver it to the other side. If we turn it here with a drill, we can see just how it works. And as you can see, this compressor does have oil in it. When the system is built or a major component is replaced, there is a specific amount of oil that must be put in the system to lubricate components like the compressor. It's a special kind of oil. It might be a PAG oil, or in this case, an ester oil, and it has a UV dye in it. If there is a leak, under a black light, we can see where the oil is, and that will indicate exactly where the leak has started so we can repair it. Now, once that compressor has moved that refrigerant from the low side to the high side, it will move along to the condenser. Now, the condenser typically sits in front of the radiator, and it is a series of tubes with some fins on it. As the air travels over those fins, it will cool the tubes down, allowing the refrigerant, which is under high pressure, to turn into a liquid and cool down. It's still under high pressure, but we've taken a lot of heat out of it, and it should be turning into a liquid, hence the word condenser. Coming out of the condenser, the refrigerant is now under high pressure. It is cooled down to a liquid state, and it travels through the receiver dryer. The receiver dryer is a type of filter that will filter out any contaminants, and it also has desiccant in it to absorb any moisture. We don't want any moisture or water in the system, and the receiver dryer deals with that. Next, from the receiver dryer, our refrigerant moves to our metering device. Now, that might be a thermal expansion valve, or it might be an orifice tube, depending on the system that we have. The job of the metering device is to separate the high and the low pressure sides of the system, and it allows a little bit of refrigerant to go through as a vapor or a mist. It's still in liquid form, but it is expanding as it goes through the thermal expansion valve or the orifice. As it expands, of course, it also cools down. With a thermal expansion valve system, we'll have a bulb that is connected to the TX valve in the evaporator. Now, that bulb has a liquid similar to the refrigerant in the system that will behave depending on the temperature of the evaporator. And that will open and close the valve to allow the temperature to be maintained at the evaporator, so the TX valve is controlling just how cold it is in the cabin. Now, from our metering device, the refrigerant moves to the evaporator. Now, the evaporator is the only part of the system that is inside the cabin. Much like the condenser or a radiator, it is a series of tubes covered with fins, and as we have cold refrigerant going through it, we can blow air over it and receive that cold air from the evaporator. It will remove the heat from the environment around it, and it will also remove any moisture. The air that sits on the evaporator is very cold. We have condensated moisture from the air on the evaporator, and it can drain out through the bottom of the vehicle through a drain tube. The evaporator gives us a very cold climate, and it also removes any moisture from the air. As the refrigerant travels through the evaporator and we're warming it up with the blower fan, it is turning back into a low pressure gas, hence the term evaporator. That low pressure gas is leaving the evaporator and be returned to the compressor, sometimes via an accumulator. If we have an orifice tube system, it will use an accumulator to make sure that no liquid refrigerant makes its way back to the compressor. It will sit in an accumulator and it will boil off before it reaches this point, so we don't try and compress a liquid refrigerant. And from there, the whole cycle will start again. There's a couple of different refrigerants out there. R12 used to be used on older vehicles, and of course we now have R134a. R12 was very effective, but it was also depleting the ozone layer. It was a chlorofluorocarbon. R134a is still considered a greenhouse gas, but it is a hydrofluorocarbon and doesn't deplete the ozone layer. Of course, here in Australia, you need a license to handle any type of gas. And if you have an R12 system, in order to regas it, you need to convert it to R134a by changing the valves on the high and low pressure sides of the system. So what can go wrong to cause the system to not work? Normally, leaks are the biggest problem. If we have a hose or a fitting that is leaking, if we do not have enough gas, the system will be inefficient, and with low pressure switches in the system, the compressor may not even engage if the gas pressure is too low. Of course, if the gas pressure is also too high, there is a high pressure switch that will turn off the compressor as well. Unlikely to get a high pressure situation unless you have a blockage somewhere causing all of the gas to be accumulated in one spot. On that, of course, blockages can be a problem. If we have an orifice system and we get some material in the system, maybe the compressor has failed or something like that, the orifice can become blocked and we'll have a very hot condenser and an evaporator that is not cold at all. That is a symptom if we have a blocked orifice tube or a thermal expansion valve. Of course, all of our diagnostics can be pretty much covered with a test kit like this. We have a low pressure side and we have a high pressure side here as well. If our pressures were equal, perhaps our TX valve or orifice has a problem and it is wide open and the system is just circulating. Of course, it'll tell us if the compressor is actually compressing the gas, because we should have a high and low reading. And this also allows us to regas the system. Maybe our pressures are too low, our low pressure system is in vacuum and our high pressure system isn't high enough, and that'll tell us we don't actually have enough gas in the system. We can use this to gas up the system. It has a central port here in which we can allow all of our refrigerant to flow into the system and gauge our pressures as we go. Like I said before, in Australia, you do need a license to carry out repairs like this and handle any refrigerant before working on your car. Now, of course, before resorting to any of this and checking all our pressures and doing all the things, there's a few different things we can check. We need to make sure that the compressor is actually pulling in. You'll notice that the center of the compressor should be turning if you've got it turned on and the car is idling. If the center isn't turning, it means that the clutch isn't engaged. Either the vehicle is not engaging the clutch because we have a low pressure system, or we have a cut wire, or the ECM is deciding not to cut it in at this point, or there's an issue with the compressor itself. You can usually unplug and test them here with a small battery and make sure that it will kick in and out. And that is a good way to eliminate that the compressor has a problem with the electronic side of the magnet. Of course, a few other simple things. If you have an inefficient system, maybe your evaporator is blocked. We get leaves and debris in there from just general driving of the vehicle, or perhaps our condenser is blocked and we're having an inefficient system because there is no air flowing over the condenser. Have a look in front of your radiator. If it's full of mud or something, if you're four-wheel driving, you may want to wash out that condenser and see if your system becomes more efficient. It's very important to get airflow over the condenser and the evaporator in order for the system to work. Of course, also make sure when the system is on and the car is stationary that you have a condenser fan that's working. If your condenser fan is electronic and it's not working, it's not going to be very efficient, especially if you're parked in traffic. When the car's moving, if your air conditioning seems colder, and when you come to a stop, it seems like it's not blowing cold air anymore, perhaps your condenser fan isn't pulling any air through that condenser, and that could be your problem. Other than that, that's pretty much everything I know about air conditioning systems. Thank you very much for watching.